What you are looking at is a freeze-based Flicker Strike Lightning Warp Invoker monk. This gameplay footage is representative of the kind of power we had just a couple days ago prior to the crippling nerfs to metagems and their energy. And yet it's also representative of the current state post-nerf, as this footage has been recorded the day after the patch. What's up everyone, it's Stu, I'm back. It's long past time for me to make another video, and the timing is such that I think I should do it through the lens of this recent major patch update that came around day 6. This was a pretty big one. A hot fix that fixed a lot of things, a lot of quality of life, ground roll, not getting stuck as much, that sort of thing. But it also fixed some evidently unintended gameplay that players were really taking advantage of, reaping a lot of power, and now that's been taken away from some of us. As you could see from the footage at the front of the video, my build's still functioning quite well, despite the changes. And for sure, it was absolutely off the hook. I was actually crashing the game quite a bit prior to this with the build that I was using because it was just too much. And so now I'm in more of a reasonable place, still very fast-paced, very fun. But I know that it definitely crippled a lot of builds. My condolences goes out to anyone who completely lost their build over this. I know the Sorcerer... Comet build, I guess, was one. I don't know the details on that. But, you know, I find myself in my own wheelhouse, very comfortable here with having taken advantage of all that theory crafting and time testing things, not trying to race or get to the end of the game with a certain build and then not knowing what to do when it's impacted. I have a great many tools in my head about things that I can do because I've been working so hard and not coming out with videos because I'm playing the game like crazy and testing stuff. It's been a lot of fun. I love this part of the game. And I am indeed loving the game a lot. Of course, my build not wrecked, so that's one reason why. But, you know, if you're somebody who would like to maybe see some solutions or look at things from a different angle, I'm going to shine a spotlight on what I'm doing. So hopefully you can understand, and maybe you want to reroll after this. No takebacks. Who knows what will happen in the future. I think my build is probably okay. I don't think it's working completely as unintended. But anyway, we'll take a look at it. We're going to start with the Reddit notes. I'm not going to go down and see the Reddit responses, but real quick, and just take note that the major change that is really making everybody angry is the one about trigger gems and energy gain. Again, a staple of the Invoker monk. Should have affected me greatly. Trigger gem energy is not in the right place and it's far too easy to use elemental ailments on trigger spells. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of it. They basically say they've rebalanced energy across the board and they're tailoring it towards monster power, which we'll look at in a second in game. And long story short is it was just triggering way too much. Way too much. They didn't have time to balance the game right, and people were getting way too much power, way too many procs, whether it was cast on crit, cast on shock, freeze, elemental invocation especially. And so it's been toned down pretty greatly. Some would say by a factor of 10x, but I'm here to tell you there's a hidden buff in all of this that some of you might not be aware of that my build in particular was very much able to take advantage of. Okay, so we're in game now, and I'm just going to kind of go through briefly here what the major nerf was and kind of show you with some numbers, and then, well, of course, disclose 2 actual buffs that took place. One of them is more obvious and was disclaimed as part about power, monster power, and the other part is more hidden about skill on use. It was a major buff to my build in particular and might be for you as well, and it might help you kind of figure out another angle on how to approach maybe fixing your build that's not working as well. I can't, there's no guarantees here, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing as well, and so the rest of the video will be dedicated towards kind of quick list on you know, the workings of this build and why in the front end of the video what you saw is still working so well despite it having been nerfed actually pretty significantly, which really speaks volumes to the state it was in before, I guess. All right, so these are some of the major energy spirit gems. They reserve 60 spirit, or in the case of crit, cast on crit is 100. Cast on shock 60. The invocations are each 60. And there's a few other weird ones, but my focus was mainly on cast on ignite, shock, or freeze, or maybe elemental invocation, because I'm an elemental build. Reaper's Invocation, honorable mention. This is a great one if you're leveling, to use this the second you have 60 spirit. To use this and put Profane Ritual on there, and you just keep reaping power charges that way if you're leveling this build. Highly recommend. Cast on crit was definitely something I'd look at later on, but it reserved more spirit, and then it kind of required you to be a crit-based build, right? But the problem here is that all these numbers were basically nerfed by a factor of 10. Cast on shock used to say gain 20 energy. Cast on crit, I think, said gain 10. Elemental Invocation was, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was basically, yeah, 10x that. Cast on freeze used to say gain 100 energy. And I can't remember cast on ignite because I knew I wasn't going to go ignite. So what happened here? It was nerfed by a factor of 10, and then it was transformed into looking at monster power. Let's look at this here. And so you get additional energy beyond what it stipulates, I think. I'm guessing these numbers are based on a 1-to-1 ratio. That would make the most sense to me. So normal magic and rare monsters give a certain amount of energy. So I'm guessing, you know, if I freeze a rare enemy in this case, I would get 50 energy, not 10. If I freeze a unique monster, well, then it's obviously going to trip the whole thing then. And that's a nice buff, you know, to bossing or whatever. So it's not all bad. Definitely doesn't kind of make up for a 10x nerf necessarily. But there is another hidden buff that was not announced, and because I did so much research and prior to the game coming out, I realized that I was probably not even going to go any cast on freeze, shock, or ignite, because these for some reason had an extra stipulation where you only got energy per skill use. So that, you know, that doesn't mean much in terms of like Tempest Flurry or Charged Staff, but it means a lot in terms of Tempest Bell or Flicker Strike, where you use the skill once and, you know, you hit an enemy like 20-30 times, but you could only get, in the case of cast on shock prior to the nerfs, 20 energy one time. So I was going to probably go Elemental Invocation, which means I had to press the button, and it, you know, would drain mana a lot harder, but at least this one didn't have the stipulation there. And Cast on Crit for some reason didn't have stipulation either, which I found it weird. But anyway, the hidden buff is that Cast on Shock, Ignite, and Freeze, and perhaps a couple others, lost that stipulation. And so I was already running a heavy-handed, you know, Tempest Bell Flicker Strike build, and so that's one big reason why I didn't see a tremendous loss in energy gained. Because if I Flicker Strike around the map, I'm freezing all the normal monsters and some of the magic and rare monsters in one cast. You know, I'm getting that 10 energy 10 times over. I'm basically getting the same amount of energy I used to get. Now, this is not 100% the case, because Charged Staff is this sort of, honestly, kind of busted mechanic where it's giving you an additional attack that it counts as its own attack once per attack skill use. So I was able to kind of override that downside with that. But anyway, the raw usage of Tempest Bell and Flicker Strike certainly got the benefits back. And so kind of that's what I wanted to show you about this whole Spirit Gem situation. Now let's spend the rest of the video going over the build. Current status, I don't know how much currency I've sunk into this, a few 100x for sure. Just going to kind of scroll over the gear. And I want you to know that there will be a link down below for a max roll guide. We'll call it a skeleton guide. And it doesn't have all this gear showcase, but it showcases some of the really important rolls on gear. And it gives you the tree up to like level 96 or something. And, you know, it gives you the skills, which we'll go over now. The skills, I believe, those skills in mine match 1 for 1 at the moment. I do have a lot of spirit. I can't remember the total amount. But I'm able to fit in, yeah, 30, 30, 30, 60, 60, plus another 25. So whatever that all adds up to. And that is because of this lovely one right here. Gain 1 spirit for every 15 evasion rating on body armor. Cannot gain spirit from equipment. Well, get a body armor with a huge amount of evasion, and that'll give you a huge amount of spirit. Take note that I'm not even using the soul spring. You would assume that I'm now suddenly having to do that. I did not feel the need to invest into that. I also did not feel the need to invest all the way up here into this whole thing. Meta skills gain additional energy. I did take these, however, since they were so close and nice. So this is exactly what I have right now, and it's just kind of following along what I'm doing. I decided to anoint freedom of movement. Maybe there's other anointments Devastation is also another interesting one for AoE. It's fairly cheap, so that's good. But anyway, this build basically works as such. I walk up, I don't have any power charge or anything. I got Siphon Strike that will give me power charge if the enemy's shocked. Nothing's shocked in the very beginning. So I Tempest Flurry and Tempest Bell down, and look at the damage. The shockwave damage. Cold number. Look at the cold number compared to the other one. Now, physical is up there too. This is freezing enemies, okay? This is like spam freezing enemies in an AoE from the Tempest Bell. And it's linked up to, you know, Overabundance, Persistent. I can throw a couple down at once. Execute and Glaciation. Really important. This is one of the recent discoveries. Definitely should put Glaciation down here. It will get me power charges on a cast on freeze relatively quickly, unless the content's like way too hard for me. Siphoning Strike just kind of plays a gap closer. I'm able to port to monsters and then get a whole bunch of exposure on them at once. Trying to play around with Ignite, but that's not working too well. Tempest Flurry is a sort of all-purpose use ability that also procs Charge Staff, and it makes me just kind of, you know, go crazy through the map. A lot of damage on Charge Staff, plus Ice Bite is there. It's a really good spot there. Tempest Flurry is no longer really a DPS thing. It is now utility. Of course, I want the attacks to go faster, AoE, and then qualitying this up is super important. Now it has 8 range, and prioritizing AoE is insanely strong for this. You can reach almost the entire screen with your Tempest Flurry alone, which is wild, and that has huge benefits here. Another recent discovery, try Electrocute Neural Overload and Tempest Flurry and see what happens. You're going to love it, I promise you. Once you no longer need it for DPS. Yeah, most of DPS is Charge Staff and Flicker Strike at this point. Flicker Strike is, yeah, just used for damage, and, you know, the breakdown is as such. Yes, this can actually freeze monsters. If we go down here, cold damage. Look at that cold damage. Why do I have so much cold? Flicker Strike's not even an elemental spell. It's a physical. But why do I have so much cold? Well, the secret to the build is you have to have a flat roll of cold. Now, if you wanted to force shock version, you could go flat version of, or flat of lightning, but it's way less defensive and honestly harder to proc anyway. For some reason, the game is balanced to make it so it's easier to freeze stuff. Freeze buildup, I think, is actually just way too powerful right now. I guess that's what the deal is. So, a nice physical damage roll for the damage, and then instead of doing a hybrid roll for the third prefix, major cold roll, and this will set you up nicely to be able to freeze. Also, bonus points if you can get some flat on the rings or the gloves. Definitely strong to do. You could even potentially do just rings and gloves first until you get a better weapon, but really need it on the weapon. It is so important. It's a huge deal to get those cold rolls. You need to see these numbers go up. It is so powerful, the impact here, getting that cold number to rise higher and higher. I know Charge Staff is a lightning skill, but you can still crank up the cold number on it quite nicely. And don't just throw lightning infusion to something randomly. And the other big thing is Herald of Ice. Okay, Herald of Ice is actually huge. It seems stupid to use Herald of Ice because, you know, I'm thinking of myself as lightning shock-based build, right? But no, Herald of Ice is what actually kills the enemy. If you go Flicker Strike without Herald of Ice, you don't really kill anything. It's kind of sad, honestly. So Herald of Ice is a terrific place to put Innervate because my Flicker Strike is probably shocking, maybe, anyway. And so it sometimes procs Innervate. And then we have Cold Infusion just unloading on the damage. It can't freeze anyway, so Elemental Focus. And then Shock Siphon is a nice way to get ES recovery. This is actually a fairly strong way to get ES recovery in maps, but it's one of those things where it's not really effective if you're struggling on the content, which is when you'd really want it. So, I mean, it's one of those things, definitely the kind of build where you're either ramping and you're there or you're not. And a lot of it has to do with whether Innervate and, more importantly, Ice Bite is proc. You really want Ice Bite to be up. When Ice Bite is up, there's almost nothing that can go wrong. It's just going to be lovely. Now, the way I'm getting so many power charges is going to be a huge question asked. I mean, honestly, the biggest question I always get asked. It's so easy. If you can use the invocation for, gosh, I just realized I'm ignoring trades. You can use the invocation on kill when you're leveling, but at some point you're going to be able to freeze enemies pretty easily if you follow what I'm saying. And cast on freeze, you can just automate it here. Just get Profane Ritual and like Profusion, that's it. Okay, these are just luxury picks up here. They're not necessary. And the nice thing is, if you only have Profane Ritual, it will hold your energy until it's available to go. Now you would think because I'm shattering enemies with cold that this wouldn't work because it requires a corpse, but just watch the footage here and you see it works anyway. I don't know why. It may be not quite as good as it could be. In which case you could have some interesting interactions by linking on the second one something like Cold Snap. Would be curious, although that wouldn't work with Herald of Ice actually. But anyway, Moving on to cast on freeze a second round, and yes, this kind of obeys its own energy setup. Ball Lightning, Lightning Warp, Voltaic Mark. Ball Lightning allows Lightning Warp to work no matter what. If I didn't have the extra link, I would just do like Inspiration instead of Ball Lightning, but this forces Lightning Warp to go out. And yes, indeed, even mid-Flicker Strike, you'll see Shocked Ground going out. I don't have the Ascendancy point for it, which means I'm in fact Lightning Warping while Flicker Striking. I don't know how that's possible. But there's no explanation for why Shock Ground would suddenly be showing up. And it's a very, very, very strong Shock Ground. And yes, this does cost a lot of energy to blow through, you know, all of these different spells at once, proccing as much as they are. But if you have a decent mana pool and you take Siphon, it's good. Leech is not very good, but Mana on Kill is very strong. Mana Regen used to feel better, but after the patch, it's not so good. Mana on Kill is the secret sauce to maintaining mana. Of course, again, only if you're currently there ramping and killing stuff and freezing stuff like crazy is that going to work out well for you. Ghost Dance and Wind Dancer are there, just kind of obvious two pairing. I think Ghost Dance is better. Wind Dancer is better if you take Eternal Youth, which I'm very much on the fence of about now. By the way, quick honorable mention, Heartstopper is really good. If I had the passive points, I'd take it. If I got to do a Burning Ground map, this is obviously really, really good, and good for poison, things like that too. So that's it. That's the build. That's how it functions. And I guess we'll just we'll load up a map real quick, if the game will let me. Just something real simple here. I like either alking or doing that. We'll just throw this in. I kind of show you how I do it in real time. Not a highlight reel. Okay, this is just real. Oh, this has Burning Ground? Oh, that sucks. Spec for it, don't I? Okay, so I put the bell down and instantly things, you know, got frozen. And I got power charges because of the Profane Ritual that's already proccing on there. So I used the power charges and I'm just killing enemies now. I haven't even flickered yet. I need to have Charge Staff all the way up with additional power charges before flickering really makes sense. If there's no enemies in a sort of line conjunction, I stop flickering, which is fine. But now you can see I'm just on 6 charges, 6 charges, 6 charges, just sitting there like that. And they just come free flowing in. And I really should spec Heartstopper right now, but I'm going to just kind of do a little bit more combat so you can kind of get a sense. Even 1 power charge still does a lot because it effectively does 2 power charges worth it. I've realized recently the reason why sometimes extra flickers happen is because Flicker Strike, I don't know if this is working as intended, but Flicker Strike just keeps on going if you proc Perpetual Charge into it. So you could proc Perpetual Charge like 10 times in a row, and that'll make you just flicker like 100, you'll hit enemies like 100 times straight. You can always just dodge roll out if you need to. So you can see Charge Staff is out there. You saw their buffs, Ice Bite, Innervate are out there. I'm Tempest Flurrying when, you know, I'm not set up to do Flicker Strike. Basically, Flicker Strike if I got the Charge Staff buff up and I have at least 1 power charge. If I'm missing, basically if I'm missing any of that, I just play the Tempest Rush Tempest Bell. So it's still a Tempest build. It's, you know, it's a Tempest Flicker Warp build or something like that. I still don't know the exact name. But that's kind of how the build works, and it's really free-flowing, super fast, so much fun. And I made this kind of a guide video, but this is sort of an all-encompassing, let's address the changes that took place, show you how I'm working with it. So much despairing in the community. I don't want people to be despaired. It's a week 1 review, where I'm at, week 1, I'm late red maps. It's fine. I haven't done anything super crazy. How can I showcase the build? Kind of like a build guide, but not a formal one. We'll come out with one a little bit later when I feel like I need ample testing. And I also don't like the idea of putting out a guide when it could just get completely nerfed super hard anyway. I'll probably do it at some point, but I have a little bit of reservation about that because, you know, what if I put a guide out and then it just gets destroyed? Not my fault, but it's just really bad. Bad for the community. But anyways, this build's so much fun. I don't know how long it'll last. Again, post-nerf, still working really nice. Do cast on freeze, put that cold roll in the weapon. Get a cold, even if you have to sacrifice physical damage, do it. Do lower tier maps. Get a garbage weapon with a good cold roll. And, oh, by the way, attack speed, crazy important. This is the best base, I think, because I actually prioritize attack speed more than anything. This weapon could be so much better. It could have a tyrannical roll on it instead of a hybrid roll that it has. And yeah, my gear could be a lot better, but it's still sitting pretty good. I have a lot of evasion now and armor functionally because of the other point here. And you know what? Even though the guide suggests that I'm going to go the Soul Springs Eternal, I would suggest that for regular players as kind of a way to get into it, but I'm probably going to go I Am Thunder. Or you know what? I might actually test Unbound Avatar for once. Well, then there's always crit after that. Oh, this is why this game's so fun. I mean, I actually have to make some pretty tough choices. This is good, this is good, this is good, and this would actually be pretty good. What the hell? Well done. GG. Well done. I have to make so many interesting choices. I want to take these points right here. I want to get this. I want to go up here and take these 3, but I can't. I kind of want to go up here and take this here with the chance to return, but, you know, can't do that. I kind of want to go down here and get all this stuff. I'm surprised. The passive tree is actually really good, really well balanced. And I think the best anoint is probably going to be this one in the end. It's going to be climate change because that will give you 25% damage multiplier, freezing everything anyway, pretty much. And it will allow this to actually work. That would be freaking huge. By the way, I don't know if that's multiplicative with the other forms of gain extra or if it's just additive. I'm not really sure how that would work because this is basically heat shiver in a passive notable. Very interesting. Well, that's the damage outlook on it. So guys, that's it for this week 1 update / build guide / addressing community concerns all in one package video. I will be coming out with more videos soon. I've been avoiding sleep, eating meals, watching content. I'm not even in the know-how on what's going on with other people because I've just been deeply engrossed in this, actually having a lot of fun. It was kind of a rough ride at the start. I knew I would get through it. I knew I would just grind through it, and I have a stomach for that. I know a lot of people don't, but absolutely I'm loving this game. It's too early to say whether I truly like it better than PoE1, but I'm going to be playing this game for a while, for sure. So stop on by to Twitch if you want the constant updates on the build. If you want to join in on what's going on, I can answer all questions. Discord's a helpful place too. We got a nice community there, but expect some more big things from me. That's how I'd roll. I ramp up. Start off a little slow and just ramp on up. I'm going to be coming out with currency making guides at some point. I think Delirium is actually really good. Ritual is not quite as good as I thought. It's really rippy, but oh my god, those breaches though. This build was phenomenally good at breach. I didn't expect it to be so good at breach. I didn't expect Flicker Strike to be that crazy good about getting all the way through the map. So much extra kills compared to I think any other class at that point. As you can tell, I'm excited. I want to get back into the game, so I'm going to close out this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.